Odoo is one of the up-and-coming systems in the ERP space, but a lot of people still haven't heard of the system. It's a great product with a lot of strengths, but it also has a lot of weaknesses, which begs the question, is Odoo the right fit for you? That's what we're going to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys, including helping them select and implement products like Odoo and other ERP systems as well. We recently published our top 10 ERP systems for 2025, and Odoo is in the top 10. By the way, you can read that top 10 by downloading our 2025 digital transformation report. You can find that by scanning the QR code right here. And in that guide, you'll see some of the pros and cons of Odoo. And we also published a video recently that talks about some of the up-and-coming ERP systems in the market. Up-and-coming ERP systems a lot of people haven't heard of, but might be good fits and might be good alternatives to some of the big household brand names. And you can watch that video, by the way, by clicking right here, and you can watch that full video where I talk about 5 different ERP systems, including Odoo, that you might want to consider as up-and-coming ERP systems. So the question becomes, Odoo's a great product. There's a lot of companies that are using it. It's growing quickly. It's got a high valuation. They just got a big capital infusion from Google's parent company. So there's a lot of upside to Odoo, and it has a bright future. But there's disadvantages as well, just like there is for any other ERP system in the marketplace. And so what I want to do today is share with you an objective and independent, agnostic view of helping you determine whether or not Odoo is right for you, or at the very least, if it's a product that you might want to consider. Let's start by looking at the pros and cons of Odoo. We'll start with the advantages here. And the advantages and the benefits of using Odoo are a few things. First, it's a very clean user interface. It's something that's very simple to use. It's fairly simple to configure. It's got a low-code sort of feel to it to where even the non-technical types can set up and use the software. It's also a relatively simple ERP system, and I mean that in a good way. It's not overly complex. It's not a super cumbersome system that has tons and tons of functionality that you don't need. It's pretty straightforward and to the point. It doesn't have a lot of really sexy stuff that you don't need or that might end up being shelfware for you. So it really gets to the heart of the operations of a lot of different types of companies. And another thing I'll talk about here is that Odoo is becoming more and more of a household name, and they're increasing their market share over time. The company has a lot of resources behind it. They just got a big capital infusion that valued the company, I think, at over $1 billion. And so there's a lot of money going into the product, going into the company, and they're really starting to expand not only the product itself, but also the ecosystem of providers that can help implement Odoo. And then a final thing that I'll mention that's sort of an intangible. It's hard to quantify this or discuss or determine how much of an impact this should have on your decision-making process, but it's worth noting that of all the ERP systems that I've worked with in the marketplace over the years, I would say the Odoo community is the most passionate about the Odoo product than any other system I've ever worked with. I don't know why that is. I don't know what the secret sauce is or the magic behind the product or the leadership at the company, but there's something about Odoo that people just rave about the product. In fact, when I put this video out, I imagine it's going to get a lot of views and a lot of comments simply because there's so many people interested in Odoo and they're passionate about Odoo. And when I talk about the disadvantages here in a moment, I might get a lot of people that disagree with me and want to take issue with some of the things I talk about. So that all being said, the Odoo user community and the ecosystem is very passionate, it's robust, it's growing, it's a simple product, and it can be a great fit for a lot of organizations. Now the downside is that Odoo is a relatively simple product, as I mentioned. So if you're a relatively simple company, you're high growth, you're not a huge company, you have relatively simple operations, Odoo can be a great fit, especially if you're moving from like a QuickBooks or some Excel spreadsheets or manual processes. Odoo can be a natural fit for your first ERP system, much like a NetSuite or some of the other entry-level ERP systems in the marketplace. But if you're a big, complex, diversified organization, you might outgrow Odoo pretty quickly. It might be too limited for your abilities, especially, for example, if you're a large, complex engineered order manufacturing company with a really complex supply chain, really complex manufacturing operations, very complex and robust planning needs. Some of those things might stress or tax the functionality or the capabilities of Odoo in a way that means you would have to upgrade to a different type of system that has more complexity. So that can be limiting to the types of organizations that use it, which is why there's so many small and mid-market companies that tend to focus on Odoo. The other thing that's actually sort of a pro and a con, or an advantage and a disadvantage, is that it's an open source system. So that means that you can actually go in and configure and change the software in a low-code sort of a way, low-code, no-code sort of a way. And it also allows you to implement the system in a really modular way. So it's built to be modular in that you could pick one function like CRM or just the financials or the inventory management, and you can pick off pieces of Odoo and start to deploy it, and you can deploy it for free. So that's how they get you involved or get you engaged with the product, is they give you a free version of it, and then over time you pay for it. So it's sort of that freemium approach where you can try it for free, but then you got to pay later on. And as you start to pay and increase your usage of Odoo, that's where the price kickers come in, and it can actually get somewhat expensive, especially if you're a smaller mid-sized company. But very unique business model. I don't know of any other ERP vendors that do that, where they provide that truly modular approach. They provide that freemium opportunity to try the product before you buy it. So there's a lot of good things that come along with that. So it's important to really understand what your total cost of ownership long-term is going to be, especially if you start off using a free version or a low-cost version of Odoo. You just want to make sure you understand what you're locking yourself into, because it is very hard to change any ERP system, and you don't want to have to change it sooner than you need to. So those are the two main disadvantages of Odoo: the fact that it has somewhat limited functionality, and the cost can escalate pretty quickly and become expensive for organizations that have limited budgets and resources. Now, the types of companies that are going to be the best fit for Odoo are, first of all, going to be companies that are in the small and mid-market. If you're a company that's under, say, $100 million in revenue, that's probably the sweet spot of where we see organizations interested in Odoo. Not to say there aren't larger organizations that use it. I know Odoo as a company is trying to target some of these larger enterprises, but realistically, we see mostly companies under 100 or even 50 million or less that are using Odoo that are seriously interested in the product. Odoo also does really well with, as I mentioned before, sort of vanilla businesses. And I don't mean vanilla as in boring or vanilla as in they don't have any competitive advantages. I just mean the operations themselves aren't overly complicated or overly complex. So if you have a distribution company, even if it's high volume, but it's a fairly high volume, low variation sort of product you're manufacturing or distributing, that can be a good fit for an Odoo. If you're looking for a product that has fairly strong accounting and finance needs, but you don't have super complex accounting and finance needs, Odoo can be a great fit for you. And Odoo also does really well with e-commerce based companies. So if you have a website that you're selling products on, or if that's a key source of revenue for your organization, Odoo's pretty strong in the e-commerce space. So it can handle basic manufacturing, basic distribution, basic finance and accounting, basic CRM. It can do a lot of things that you might need from an ERP system, but as I mentioned before, there's some limitations, and that's what I'll get to next. So the question is Odoo the right fit for your company? And I've shared with you some of the pros and cons and some of the situations where Odoo fits best. I'd say if you are a small and mid-sized company that has fairly vanilla or fairly standard processes, or if you have processes that are shapeable, you're willing to change those processes to fit the software, then Odoo might be a great fit. If you're a big multinational, complex, diversified organization, Odoo's probably not going to be a good fit, because it doesn't have the robust capabilities that, say, an SAP S/4HANA or an Oracle Cloud ERP might have, or even Microsoft D365. So you really have to make sure you vet out the business processes and make sure you understand what Odoo can and can't do. And that's important for any ERP system you might evaluate. And it's important to recognize and understand what those limitations are. And if you'd like to learn more about Odoo and other systems in the marketplace, I encourage you to read our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's a tech-agnostic view of the industry that we publish each year. It includes our top 10 ranking of ERP systems in the market, including Odoo, but there's 9 others that you might want to consider as well. And we also talk about implementation best practices and digital strategies that will make you successful in your digital transformation efforts. You can read that report off our website by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. So I hope you found this information useful, and I hope you have a great day. But realistically, so the question is, Odoo the right, where am I going with this? Like, what am I talking about?